North Korea ushered in the new year vowing to mass-produce battlefield nuclear weapons targeting South Korea and introduce a more powerful intercontinental ballistic missile capable of striking the United States mainland. Then Seoul brought up the prospect of joint nuclear exercises with the US. But President Joe Biden denies there have been talks between the allies. South Korea reconfirming Tuesday that they are in discussions following the heightened threats from the north. We've also received news that South Korea carried out a solid-fuel rocket test last week. The Defence Ministry says it was part of efforts to build a space-based surveillance capability and bolster its defence posture. It didn't notify the public, causing a brief scare. Some people thought it was a North Korean missile, others a UFO. Well, regional tensions and Russia's war on Ukraine are stoking fears in Japan. It recently unveiled its biggest military build-up since the Second World War. A $320 billion plan that'll buy missiles capable of striking China and ready it for sustained conflict. East Asian countries are responding to the changing status quo in the region. It's a challenge.
Adapting to rapidly changing times. The idea of growing its own military muscle isn't new in Japan. It just didn't get prioritized. But in December, the government finally announced a new national security strategy that will see its defense spending being doubled within 5 years. A response to China's military build-up and increasing activity in the region. I recognize that the present diplomatic and militaristic behavior of China poses a challenge to our efforts to maintain the peace and safety of Japan and the peace and stability of the international community and to solidify the international order based on the rule of law. But it's not just China. To Japan, North Korea's nuclear weapons program is also a very real threat. Pyongyang fired an unprecedented number of missiles in 2022, behavior that also worries Seoul. Even after a denial from President Joe Biden, South Korea insists it's discussing possible joint exercises with the US using Washington's nuclear assets. This came after Pyongyang labeled Seoul as its undoubted enemy and sent military drones into the south. It was such an incident that showed that our military's readiness and training have been very insufficient over the years. And it clearly confirmed that stronger preparedness and training are needed. But while South Korea and Japan are countering similar regional threats, relations between the two neighbors have also been at their worst in years. Last month, South Korea summoned a senior diplomat from Japan's embassy following the announcement of Tokyo's new national security strategy. Seoul protested against Japan's territorial claims over the contested islands of Dokdo or Takeshima in the plan. One of the past disputes hindering the neighbors' closer ties, despite their shared wish to maintain the region's status quo.
Our East Asia correspondent can tell us more, William Yang. Let's start with Japan's record defence budget. How does the government justify those measures considering its pacifist constitution?
So the Japanese government have laid out a very clear reason why they feel contempt and also necessary for them to raise the defense budget. They cited threats coming from China, Russia, and North Korea as the primary reasons why Japan needs to enhance its budget and also invest in a lot more defense capabilities. And one of the biggest changes that experts have pointed out is the counter-strike capability, which will fundamentally change Japan's defense policy and the direction of Japan's entire defense strategy.
And in its so-called national security strategy, Japan makes a territorial claim over disputed islands with South Korea, which has seen Seoul issue a strong protest.
Right. The island has long been a very sore point between Seoul and Tokyo. And currently, the South Korea have actually sent and based their police over there. But Japan has long also claimed territorial integrity over that island. And this protest, I think, comes at a point where the U.S. is really trying to build a partnership between Japan and South Korea in the Indo-Pacific. And in the South Korean Indo-Pacific strategy that was just released last week, we also seen that they mentioned the very importance of strengthening the relationship with Japan. So I think this island dispute will continue to be a very difficult point for both countries to try to resolve as they try to build closer partnership and connection, especially on the security front in the overall Indo-Pacific strategy under the umbrella that is led by the United States.
Well, how does that dispute or how far back will that dispute then put South Korea and Japan in their joint efforts to uphold regional peace?
I think the biggest challenge to the bilateral trust between Japan and South Korea for them to strengthen security relationship is going to come with the trust that they have with each other. And obviously, the dispute over these islands will continue to put some challenge over how both countries can overcome decades of mistrust between each other and then really become security partners that the U.S. can rely on. And at this point, we are not really seeing both sides putting forward a very concrete plan for them to compromise or have reach consensus over these islands. So for them to be able to actually become reliable security partners in the region, they will definitely first have to make the first step to actually reach out and have bilateral relationship and talks over the status of these islands.
And put it into perspective for us, how much of a bigger threat is this growing threat from North Korea's ballistic missile program?
As we know, last year was the year that North Korea conducted the highest number of their missile tests in history. And just in the beginning of this year, they have already conducted two large-scale missile tests just before the new year and then on Sunday as well. And then the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has also made it really clear that they are going to increase their investment and their capabilities in the nuclear strike weapons. And they pointed to South Korea and the U.S. as the primary threat for them to be pushed to do that. And so I think experts are also pointing out that essentially the scale of these tests should no longer just be characterized as missile tests. They should be viewed as military exercises because of the scale and the frequency that it's happening. And they are concerned that there is probably not going to be a short-term solution to de-escalate the tension that is currently really reaching a boiling point in the Korean Peninsula.
And you mentioned China before. How worried do we have to be about its ambitions abroad?
I think we should pay very close attention to the People's Liberation Army's activities in and around Asia. It's not only just in South China Sea where they have long been conducting these very provocative moves and try to expand their territorial claims, but at the same time, over the last year, they have been conducting regular military exercises with Russia near Japan. And that is exactly one of the points that was highlighted in Japan's national security and national defense plans, that China is now the greatest security challenge to Japan and also to the international community. And we have and are continuing to see the close relationship between Russia and China being highlighted by the two leaders. Most recently, just a few days ago, Xi Jinping and the Russian President Vladimir Putin met via a video conference, and they highlighted this importance of the bilateral relationship again. And so I think we need to pay very close attention to how China is really expanding its ambition in South China Sea, in East China Sea, and obviously also in the Taiwan Strait, where there are a lot of potential threats and also potential points that could potentially escalate the situation.
DW's William Yang. It could be an interesting 2023.